We call to order the Policy Review Committee meeting for February the 6th, 2025. We'd like to first acknowledge that we're on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inca, Kamak, and Silks people. So first order is we have the Policy Review Committee meeting minutes from December the 4th, 2024. It's moved by Egan and second. Okay. Carried. And then we have new business and we have the land use development. Well, I looked around. You didn't oppose and then. Oh, I did. I looked, I gave you the eyebrow. You put your finger up. The eyebrow is total control. And once you understand, no. So no, okay. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay, so land use development procedure bylaw. 4.1. Sir Channing.
Manager of Development Services, come up.
If I hit the right button.
Yeah,
There we go.
good afternoon. I just want to give you a quick summary regarding the proposed amendments. So we are basically amending the land use and development procedures bylaw in 2 rounds. In the first rounds, we want to focus on removing the schedules A to G, and then remove the requirements for signage for development variance permit application because it's not required as per the Local Government Act. Then we are doing some housekeeping amendments to improve the language regarding the development permit issuance. And then we would like to reference the fees and charges bylaw. So currently the procedures bylaw have schedules A to G. So schedule A is basically different type of applications in the bylaw. Schedule B has fees for OCP amendments, minor variance permits. So there are different fees attached to the schedules. And then schedule C, D, E, F, those are basically development permit templates that has been attached to the bylaw. So the staff has updated the development permit application forms, and since we have a new OCP and we are also, our zoning bylaw is also amended and adopted after 2022, and then we continuously made amendments in zoning bylaw. So it's really, the removal of this schedules basically allows staff to formulate development permit application based on most current regulations, legislations. The staff is still following the bylaw, but we are formulating the development permit conditions on case-by-case basis. So if you have, for example, if you have geotech DP, so those geotech DPs have different conditions, and those conditions comes from the OCP geotech DPA, right? So that's why we are proposing to remove the schedules so that staff can have flexibility in drafting development permit applications and development permits.
So with this change, then it would just be in the permit? Like when they do the permit, is that what?
So ultimately, we're trying to remove schedules that are forms and that sort of thing from all of our bylaws, because once it's in the bylaw as an attached schedule, it's part of the bylaw. So that means every time we want to change a form, we have to bring the bylaw back to council. So we're taking all the schedules, any schedule that we can out of our bylaws, and we're doing them more as a procedure.
In the permit?
In any of our bylaws.
Okay.
So for this particularly, this gives them the opportunity to modify or amend these documents without it having to be, without having it be contrary to the bylaw.
Okay.
So it does for everything, gives us more flexibility. Same thing if like, you wanted to have a business license application. We don't want to put the business license application in the bylaw because we might change the business license application, like all of that sort of thing. Just like we took fees out of bylaws because we don't want to have to update the bylaw every time we want to update the fees.
Yeah, that's probably why some of the fees haven't been updated.
Exactly.
In a long time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the goal is to have all the fees in the fees and charges bylaw. So we have to, right now, in the procedures bylaw, there are fees, and then the sign development permit and sign permits the entire permit fees are collected based on sign bylaw. So there is a small section in the sign bylaw which talks about what fees should be collected for the sign permit. So probably have to amend the sign bylaw and have that particular section in the fees and charges bylaw.
And I don't know if it was in this section. So when we're doing a zoning change, are they still having the signs up or is just less of a?
Yeah, so for OCP amendment and zoning amendment, we do require public notification sign, like a physical sign installed at the
Yeah.
property. But for the variances, as per the procedures bylaw, we require the sign, but that is not really allowed as per the local government act. So we are removing that
Okay,
physical sign installation requirement from the procedures bylaw. So they just have to do a public mail out within the 30 meters of the
okay.
property. So that basically, yeah. And some of the other amendments, oh, sorry.
Oh, I think there was some questions. from
Is it pertinent to ask a question about this schedule or is that in a few minutes? It says, markup of proposed amendments, the land use and development procedures. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, development permit areas. Where are they? Like it says, development permits required in specific areas, development permit
Permit area.
9.8 on page.
So we have, as per the current OCP, we have, I think, 11 development permit areas. So one is city center, two is multi-unit housing, then there is a commercial DPA, there is a geotech DPA, riparian DPA, wildfire DPA. So total, we have 11 development permit areas, and there is a whole map of DPAs in the current OCP. So if your property comes within that development permit area, you would require a development permit.
So, just as a matter of questioning, it talks about, you have to go through, a facade development permit if you live in that area. So if you want, if I live in that development permit area, if I want to paint my house. I have
Yes.
to-
So we want to fix that. Actually, that's a good point. We probably want to remove the painting of the building exterior, but the facade DP is a minor DP. So if a commercial
Yes,
property
you can see-
yeah.
Yes, yeah. I
or
see that.
multi-apartment building, they are doing exterior renovation, that will trigger facade DP.
Mhm.
So we'll probably remove painting of the buildings from the bylaw, and we'll fix that.
Is there gonna be on that same question, is there gonna be a difference for the commercial? Because I remember when we had a refurbish the downtown on Koshena.
Yeah, so those guidelines are in the OCP, so there are specific guidelines for facade improvement, so we just wanna enforce those guidelines when somebody's doing the facade improvement work.
But a citizen wanting to update their vinyl siding to hardy plank or something like that.
Yeah, so those guidelines have like basically talks about fire smart materials. So if
Okay.
you are doing exterior renovation, those materials should be fire smart. So there are a bunch of guidelines in the OCP, and we want to make sure those guidelines are followed. Like when somebody is updating their exteriors, those materials are fire smart.
Then the.
And proper colors are used. Like we don't want like totally like a very weird colored building in the city. So.
Pranesh, could you send me the 11 DPA areas so that I can have a better
Sure, sure.
understanding of where they are in
We
town?
we can share that,
Great,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
With these changes that we're making, is this going to be making some of the permitting faster? Like, that's, one of the things that we always hear is the fact that it takes a long time to get some permits moving. Would these changes help us get the permits out a little quicker without having to do all of this stuff?
Not necessarily. These are amendments basically are proposed to so that staff can follow the current regulations, and we don't have to just copy paste from the current bylaw. So we want flexibility when we issue or when we draft development permit conditions.
You will, if I may.
Go ahead. See ya.
Yeah, so I think that, some of this is more about aligning and housekeeping. You will start to see, I think at potentially the next meeting, a bylaw come forward. A bylaw or is it a policy? Is it a bylaw? It's a bylaw. around your guys' authority. So
For minor variances,
So
yeah.
we'll have some opportunity to review what the planning department can approve. And what sort of the modern standards are for what most municipalities are allowing planners to approve versus having to come to council, which takes longer. Yeah, so you'll see some of that. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily that it's gonna be faster, but it's going to, you'll see all of our processes and policies and bylaws are coming forward to you this year through this department. So it's about modernizing and improving the whole process.
Thank you. No, I'm gonna leave it on. Because I tend to talk out.
Yes, I think the briefing note covers the major amendments that we are proposing in round one, and then the round two, we will do a comprehensive review of the entire bylaw and come up with some further amendments for the procedures bylaw, but these are the primary amendments that we want to propose at this time.
So, does anybody else have any questions?
On Tuesday, that will have done rates and fees. Sorry, on Tuesday, you'll see the rates and fees bylaw come back for these amendments. And we have the sign bylaw on the list for this year, because we have a list. If you've ever been outside my office, there's a list.
So when in one of the sections it said that you may not need the sign permit if it's part of the comprehensive development piece. So would that be for a major, like?
Yeah, for a major development, so we typically recommend like if some, like I will take an example of Gateway 286. But I think for that, we had a separate DP, right? Because that came in within the MOTI's controlled access. So we required a separate development permit because it came within it was within the 800 meters buffer of MOTI's controlled access. But we usually, when there is a huge development coming in, we recommend them to apply for a DP, and then sometimes they also submit sign drawings and engineer drawings for the signs. So at that time, the sign permits can be approved at the time of DP. So they don't need a separate sign development permit that can be processed with the development permit of the entire development. So
Commercial development. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot in here, so it's kind of a lot to digest. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm curious as to how we ended up allowing all those various residential types of housing to go right up beside where the furniture place is and the self-storage, and I want to say Iberdrola, but it's not Iberdrola. Who is it that
Viola plant before?
yes,
energy.
yeah, there's so much heavier industrial there, and now we've got these 3 different levels of housing going in.
It was because it used to be part of the regional district when they were built. And then we just did the zone.
No, I understand that, but so now we are putting in and or have allowed a development to go in where there's 3 different types of housing right adjacent to it.
I don't know.
So that was in the zoning bylaw to allow that. One of the things when we're talking about different types of zoning, so light or heavy industrial, and then having it near residential, is that typically there's some sort of buffer zone. So you'll see that I think in that particular case, there is some vegetation that is meant to be going in to buffer and create a buffer zone between industrial and residential. It should deal with some of the sound issues and the aesthetic issue. It hasn't gone in yet, but it will be going in at some point.
Okay.
Krisha, did you have? Mr. Chair, if
And also, the reason could be the residential directly supports that industrial and vice versa. So people don't have to travel distances and it's, within that neighborhood. So, yeah.
Well, that makes sense,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure that that's really what the plan was. Was approved.
It's our plan now.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess the policy committee directs staff to bring forward the proposed amendments to the City of Merritt Land Use Development Procedure Bylaw 2076/2009. So all in favor? Or mover and secondary? Egan, Charney, and carried, because we already
Thank you.
agreed that one. And then I guess the next on the agenda would be our sanitary sewer bylaw. What do you recommend? Okay. What do we have on that? More bylaw information, so I'm guessing that CAO wants to talk about
Yes,
that.
I will take this one. Thank you. Where's my document? This is a bit of cleanup. Some of the titles are for staff are incorrect, so you'll see there's some cleanup around that. We're really looking at making sure that when we are moving forward in both of the bylaws that are coming up here, that as we're moving forward with our universal metering system, water metering system, that the bylaw aligns with that. So both the water and sewer bylaw. This one specifically, one of the changes that the directors requested is that in section 29, any service pipe contents that block the flow of sewage or breakage caused by roots shall be considered abuse unless a result of a backup from the main. So what we sometimes see is that someone will complain of a blockage for their sewer, and someone will come in and try and clear it, and they'll push it onto our side of the property line, and that becomes then our issue. But ultimately, unless it's a backup, whatever's in your sewer service came from your house. So whether it's on our side of the property line or their side of the property line, they came from that house. So the city probably shouldn't hold responsibility for making those repairs, right? Because
The break is on your side.
if it's a break, but what I'm talking about is if somebody has like a diaper that goes down or some wads of toilet paper that go down, and the plumber comes in and tries to clear it and it gets pushed into our side of the pipe, that perhaps that's still not the result of the city's actions. That's the result of the homeowner's actions.
So in the case of a willow tree,
If it,
where it could be a block down that's grown in and affect your house, and it's then who's going to be held responsible in that?
well, and
case?
if it's on your side of the property line, that's your responsibility. If it's a willow tree that's on your property and it damages the pipe on our side, it's still your responsibility because it's your willow tree.
And what if it damages your property? You have no willow tree and it's from a neighbor on the next block.
That's still not the city's, any damage on private property is private property is
Who can you
responsible.
say?
Yeah.
Still the owner of the willow tree or?
No, well, you can have that civil discussion. But ultimately, from a liability perspective, if it's on private property, that damage to that pipe on your property is your responsibility. You can go and seek damages from somebody else, but that's not the city's responsibility if it's on private property.
No, I see.
That is 100% standard across any municipality.
The only difference, I don't like that word abuse, because it's, I mean,
I thought you were on two, sorry.
sorry.
Whoops.
You don't know when that's going to happen, especially if it's from someone else's tree.
Yeah.
So I just wish we could change that word abuse when it comes to there, because abuse to
Neglect.
me, well,
Neglect.
not even neglect, because you don't know what's 6
Well,
feet
if you
under.
own a willow tree, you're going to.
Yeah,
have
but what
to
happens if
expect
it's
that.
my neighbor's willow tree?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
or
so
neighbor.
I mean, I have no problems with that law. I mean, that bylaw, I don't have a problem with that. I just don't like
So you'd like us to
Those-
come up with
a
a
different
synonym?
word, yes.
Different word, because I mean, yes, you're right. There's a difference between you flushing
You
things
do
down your toilet
something
that you're not
stupid,
supposed to.
yes.
That's abuse.
I agree, yes.
A tree breaking a pipe from the roots of a tree from 2 houses down, breaking your pipe isn't necessarily abuse.
Abuse.
It's still your responsibility on your
Yes.
property.
And I'm not disputing that, it's that word.
It's that word. Okay, we'll try and find a better word.
Well,
And then,
sorry.
go ahead, if you're same topic, I got
It's
something
same
else.
topic. I think it would be challenged because the thing is that when when you take on liability, a duty owed, a duty breach and damages as a result, your duty to defend other tree, like how would the average and prudent person have any idea that there's tree roots from 3 doors down coming into their pipe? I mean, it's hard. It's just,
It
it's
would not be
difficult.
challenged, sir, because it has already been challenged and stands up in court. It is 100% the responsibility of the property owner for any damage to services on their property across this country. There is no jurisdiction where this wouldn't hold because it's private property. We don't deal with pipe breaks on private property.
No,
If
that
that is a civil matter between you and whoever owns the tree
okay.
to recover those costs.
I just, as the city, are we looking under this bylaw, if there's damage on the city side from this pipe, that we're gonna go after the property owner who had nothing to do with the?
No, if the
Okay.
tree is owned by the property owner and that tree root damages on the city side, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify because
But not if it's like from 3 houses down.
willow trees can be destructive and sometimes you can just be that innocent owner
They're
who's done
beautiful.
nothing.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think
So,
I agree with that, but.
Tale of how this worked for us on Canford Avenue. I think it was about 2018, 2016. All of our water and sewer pipes were replaced. I don't know if you remember that, Wendy, all the way down the
Yes.
bridge. Anyways, long story short, everything was connected, turned the water back on, and the pressure blew everybody's hot water tank all the way down to your house. We had to end up going after we came after the city said not our fault, it wasn't, so we went after the contractor. And they immediately declared bankruptcy. But anyway, with the city did not have responsibility to make sure that it didn't blow the bottom of our hot water tanks out. And then about 3 years later, same thing happened again. And I placed more hot water tanks in that house than I care to remember. But so we went down that process and we had a civil situation with the contractor.
Well, that's why we're here, right?
Yes, and so just to be clear, this is very standard. I've looked at many of these bylaws. I've rewritten several of these bylaws. It's very standard.
Go ahead, Councillor. Sure.
I'm just wondering, the way I read it, number 5 on page 34 and number 34 on page 39, are they a bit of a contradiction? Because it says, any owner of property up to 2 hectares in the area within the city in which there is located a residential or commercial building and
The sewage one.
on which abuts on any city right of way or easement in which there is now or hereafter located a sanitary sewer main of the city is hereby required to be connected directly to the city's sanitary sewer. And then on 34, all customers using private sewage disposal systems shall operate and maintain such facilities in a sanitary manner at all times at their own expense.
So it's
Got a
it's
contradiction.
confusing. It's not contradictory. So we do have properties that are over the size
I know of one.
within the municipal boundaries. So they are allowed to have a private sewer system. They are required to maintain that private sewer system. If anything under that 2 hectares?
Under 2 hectares.
Anything under 2 hectares has to be connected to our system. To the general community system.
How much is 2 hectares?
Less than 2 acres.
It's about an acre and a half.
So you're talking about a septic system, like
Yes,
having a private
yeah.
septic
some
system?
sort of either a field or a tank.
Yeah.
Whatever the system is, if it's over 2 hectares, they're allowed to have that system as long as it's approved by Interior Health and
Yeah.
everything.
And now how does the city know that it's operated, maintained in a sanitary manner? Do we inspect or we just assume?
Well, if we
Oh.
have complaints, then we would follow up because we can't really that's a higher level of service than we can offer. But Interior Health monitors that. And if they come back to us and say, well, my septic system's not working, we're not doing anything about that for that. Like that's their problem.
How many systems in town do we have that are their own?
I'm not
I know of
sure.
one.
I think there's not very many. There's like maybe 4 or 5 of them. There were some issues with transitioning some people in Collettville at one
Mhm,
point,
Yeah.
mhm.
but we're dealing with some of those issues. I think we only have a couple of issues there, but I think it's not very many. It's a
Okay.
handful.
I would, yeah, because I think Collettville's been part of the city since the mid-90s.
Yeah, there's some transition issues there we're still dealing with, but we've got it in hand.
Okay, that
And
was
that-
my question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I know when you read it the first time, you're like,
because when I was talking about the level of contaminants and whatnot. I was wondering how you would track that if they were on a septic, but I guess it would only be if there was complaints.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Um,
Okay, my question is
Counselor Egan.
more about which is the old and which is the new?
so there should be one, oh,
So this one is the old one?
yeah,
And then now you're saying this one here is gonna be the new?
yes. That is
But there's-
correct.
And everything, but you have still things crossed out and.
The stuff in red is the changes that we've made. We've either taken things out or we've added things.
Yeah.
We haven't taken, so some of this stuff will come back to you for an amendment once we finish the service standards. Some stuff might come out of this bylaw again, but because we're not done our service standards, it's in here for now. Just checking the rest of the red lines or the red, I think that was that one. We're just taking the schedules out because those change and we don't want to have to bring the bylaw every time we change something in the schedules. But otherwise, that's for the sewer one is generally it. Just mostly clean up at this point.
well, any more questions? So, okay, do we have a question that the committee recommends that the sanitary sewer bylaw be forwarded to council for consideration? Do we have mover, Egan and Charlie? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so 4.3 Waterworks bylaw. Okay, Waterworks bylaw for consideration. Okay.
So,
It's-
No, I get it, yeah. I have a question.
sure.
I think something is maybe overlooked or it should be mentioned of it in section 40. The turn on off. We did discuss earlier at a council meeting that we were going to be allowing one free turn on off a year.
It's in the fees and charges bylaw. So any fees and charges we keep in that bylaw because
Because
the next
this is pretty
council-
firm.
but you've made a decision for fees and charges, for what we charge for fees and charges. We don't want to change this bylaw because next year you may choose not to have that, right? You may rescind that. So we don't want to put anything with fees and charges in these bylaws. So yes, we did look at that. This one, if I may, Mr.
Sure,
Chair.
yeah.
This one, the main focus is, again, we opened up these bylaws to make sure that we were covering some of the issues we're going to have around the universal water meters. And so we wanted to make sure that it was clear in the bylaw that water meters are required of all
New
buildings.
Yeah.
So both residential and non-residential. So in section 44, we've cleaned that up to say meter shall be installed for each category on every parcel that receives water service from the city as per the fees and charges bylaw. So every building, whether it's a new building, a new build or an existing building.
I did have a question where we had the section where it said that if you've abandoned the sewer service after 30 days, the city would shut that off.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if it was in this one or I think it was where it was abandoned after 30 days.
That might have been in the others, the sewer bylaw.
Yeah,
There's,
I
yeah,
think
there's
it's
some sewer systems that have
Yeah.
been replaced and a stub has been abandoned or a line has been abandoned, but it's still running.
yeah.
So and what happens is that if it's not stubbed properly and capped off properly, it actually can cause additional contaminants into either the water or the sewer system. So
Well, what I was wondering is where there's properties where there hasn't been any occupants for a long time, where they're boarded up in some of the fire damaged homes, are they going to be shut off so they don't have contaminants getting into the system? And I'm only asking because some of those homes have been multiple years with no action and I'm wondering if,
confirm what we've done with those. I couldn't say off the top of my
Yeah.
head what we've done, but
but that's
excellent point.
That's the
We'll confirm
thought that I had about that when I thought, well, if these houses aren't being used, then who knows what's going in
Yeah,
that system?
For sure. We'll check on
Maybe some of these contaminants they talk about in the other bylaw.
that.
Were there any other questions?
Yeah, I do. On page 66, number 10, the city retains the rights to adjust the water supply pressure or interrupt supply due to emergency conditions, blah, 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 blah. Now, it doesn't mention what number 61 does.
Sorry, which section are you looking at?
Okay.
Number 10, page 66.
section 66 on page 10?
General, under general, number 10.
Okay,
So it says that these, to adjust the water supply pressure. Now, we also have given Mr. Green authority to adjust water pressure if there is, people that are not obeying the water bylaws. Now, I know it's on 61, but should it also be mentioned there?
so you're saying in section 10?
See, it doesn't mention anything, but in water use, it's mentioned under water use, number
Yeah.
61.
I don't think you want to be too redundant, then we have to change, we have to adjust, if we have something that's redundant in two sections, then we have to make sure we don't miss a section in making those modifications, otherwise they cancel each other out. And then, so if we modify, like, let's say we wanted to modify this bylaw and we're like, oh, we need to fix section 61, and we
Okay.
missed that it has the same language in section 10, then we
Okay,
lose
I
our
just
authority.
wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that if it
perfect.
wasn't over there, there could be someone saying, well, you didn't mention it there.
We just had the
So-
same conversation yesterday when we talked about this, but not necessarily those sections, but very similarly about, like, let's not be too redundant.
Okay, that
Yeah.
was the only thing I had on the water usage,
Yeah,
just a clarification.
yeah, I think the mayor had a question.
So the only thing that I'll bring up is the fact that the condos, we had a situation where there was possible water that was still running up there, not stubbed, that was contaminating our system. So we went and we shut that down.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we've already done that. And the thing with when we're into water restrictions, would that not fall under the fines bylaw situation? Or does it have to be in this, or would that be like a fine bylaw?
We haven't applied a fine to it yet. What we were doing was limiting people's access to water in their homes. So
Yes.
that they couldn't water.
But does that
or
fall
outside.
under, does that fall under this, what we're talking about? Is that like a?
We'll put a fine bylaw as well.
Okay.
We'll put a fine into the fine bylaw.
Thank you.
And I think the main reason we wanted to bring this to you again is because when we're looking at the universal water meter system, and we want to get council's sort of support on this, is that if you are refusing to have a water meter installed in your building, that under this bylaw, and for a long, I don't know how long what year is this bylaw from? It's at least sat in this bylaw for as long as this one has existed, is that in section, no person shall have any claim against the city. So section 51, no person shall have any claim against the city by reason of the discontinuing of water supplied to their premise until the water meter is installed. So that's been in the bylaw for a long time. And it aligns with what we were doing with the watering and the water conservation efforts in the summer, is that if you don't install the water meter, that we have the authority to turn off water until it is
Is that
installed.
what that means?
Yeah,
I think the biggest thing that people had about the water meters and the concern that we had to open house was the cost. For a lot of people, like, I know we have the grant money and we're doing the study, but I think that was the biggest.
there's no cost installing the water meters to the residents.
I understand.
Still think it's gonna cost them more.
Yeah.
They think it's gonna cost them more for water,
Yeah.
but in reality, because we're 3 to 4 times more than the national average of per capita for water usage, we're probably, I mean, we're not guaranteeing anything, but we're probably making more water than that people are getting at their homes, which means that they're paying for the cost of water production, not the cost of water consumption. Right? So we produce this much water, it costs us this much for chemicals, it costs us this much for staff time, it costs us whatever the additional costs are. But we're producing a lot of water that might not be making it to the end user. So if we can find those issues and address them, we might find we're making less water. And our end users are consuming, we know what they're actually consuming, and we can charge an appropriate rate.
Yeah.
But right now, we're consuming based on our production, not what's getting to the end, because we don't know what's getting to the end.
Yeah, people might find that they'll pay less once we have some data.
Yeah, because right now, if you're a 5-person family in a household or 1 person in a household, you pay the exact same amount.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess that a family of 5 probably uses more water than one single person in a house. Unless they have the luscious greenest lawn with a beautiful pool and hot tub and a fountain and a lazy river, and you know what I'm saying? Like, It's pretty hard to use that, the same amount of water if you're one person.
You might even have a big house and a yellow lawn. But you may as well, yeah,
Yeah.
pay less.
So it really is about charging for the end use versus the production.
Yeah, well, we tried to explain that to a couple of the seniors and they just couldn't get it.
That's why they're called
So
seniors.
just wait and see.
I think, yeah, there was a lot of fear about the water meters, but
Yeah, and it's not,
talking to them about the grant was helpful.
yeah, and it's about, like, we can't explain our water usage. We have no reliable explanation for why our water usage shows 3 to 4 times the national average.
And where does the cutoff go? Where do you start measuring from here to here?
Well, first we have to measure from the plant to people's houses, to the end use. Okay, and then if we're seeing that those are the same, then we don't have a problem. But if we get to the point where we're like, well, people are only consuming this much on average every month, or this is the total consumption per month, and this is our total production per month, and total
See, I don't-
consumption,
Yeah, but how do you know the consumption? We don't have any
So-
way of.
that's what the
measuring
meters are
When
for.
the water meters go in, so now remember when the town flooded, we had zones 1, 2,
Yeah,
3,
yeah,
4?
I understand
So
that.
zone
Start
1
with
will
the-
get their
yeah.
water meters
yeah,
first. Go
But
for a
what I'm
year,
saying is
gather
now,
data.
how do we get this? We are 4 times the national
No, we know.
average.
Because it's based on what we produce, right? Because we don't have a consumption value. We can only report what we produce, and based on what we produce goes into the service. So it doesn't come back out of the service, it goes into the service, so it stays in the service. So if it's getting lost along the way, it still looks like we're consuming that amount. So the water meters will show us what actually makes it to the end line. So when we do an assessment of the whole community, when we read the meters for the whole community and we say, okay, that value is 100, but we're producing 1,000 at the plant and we're only getting 100 at the end users.
Then how do you figure out where the leak is?
So then we start to evaluate the older pipes. We go to the places we know are problem places, and we start to say, okay, this is an area of concern. We need to think about when we're going to replace this area. This is an area of concern, right? We have to be able to then we can meter the line. So we have to know before we spend money metering the line, whether or not we're even.
That's where
the
we're gonna go to
differences.
where
And then
asset management.
identifying based on consumption versus production, there's gonna always be loss in the system. It's inevitable. Is it so much of a loss that we're gonna invest millions of dollars in underground infrastructure? Or is it a small amount of loss that isn't necessarily something we need to repair in the immediate future? Right? So there are so many variables right now that we don't know because we can't measure the use at the end of the line. And the end of the line is every single building. That's the end of the line. Not one building, not this person's house, it's every single building to know what the end of the line use is. So we can determine, again, if the end of the line use is 100 and the production is 200, is that a big deal? Knowing that there's always loss in these kinds of systems. But if the production is 1,000, that's a big difference,
Mhm.
right? And so we need to have that data before we can do anything else and before we can really determine where investment needs to happen. We're making best guess decisions at this point.
Yeah,
And that's not very efficient financially or with our other resources, right? Our human resources.
I suppose the water meters would probably help when we do the asset management projections as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that if we're trying to apply for grants or infrastructure replacement, yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Well, that's where it will be
Yeah,
helpful.
and
anyway.
people are gonna be upset. It's change. It's hard to manage change. It doesn't matter what you do, it's hard to manage change. Somebody's gonna be upset.
Yeah. Don't we know it? Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments?
No.
So do we have a motion that the committee recommends that the waterworks bylaw be forwarded to council for consideration? Councillor Egan, Councillor Charney, all in favor? Okay, information items, which we have none, and then we have onto the closed session. That this meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91C labor relations or other employment relations of the community charter. Do we have a mover? Second. Okay, all in favor? And we are closed.
But need a break.